set up. Okay, so I'll get them.
So, like, to kind of set the tone for the class, I guess. Hello, my name's Ryan. I say words sometimes. The prompts that I'm going to have you guys do requires you to write kind of the 5 things that are most important to you. So just a list 1 through 5. This isn't something that you need to like agonize over. Just like put the first 5 things that come to mind. I'll give you guys like 20, 30 seconds to do that.
20, 30. You see, he's a super duper teacher right there. You get 5. He's like, you got.
Alright, about 15 more seconds. Alright, time. So finish whatever thought you've got going on right now. Now, what I want you to do is pick one of those topics, and then do you guys, I guess, what's everyone's writing experience in here? Like, do we have poets, fiction writers, nonfiction writers? Like, what's the vibe?
I like to write like in my journal and posting on social media.
Okay.
Just thoughts, positive stuff.
Okay. Is there any interest in poetry amongst the people in the classroom? Okay. Do you normally do kind of like free form or free verse, or do you do like rhyming couplets, like rap? Like what's the vibe?
I just honestly just think of something and then just start writing.
Okay. All right. Well, has anyone heard of a pantoum before? All right.
No, sir.
I tend to typically do a prompt kind of at the end of when I'm talking, but we can do it now. So the reason I like pantoums, it's a poetic form. I'm not like a capital P poet. Like I don't do like the stuffy kind of poetry. I go to open mics, I go to poetry slams. Like I say my piece and then I go home. But I think it's interesting kind of being able to move in both spaces, kind of like the maybe less formal and the more formal spaces. And so I sometimes like do workshops where people have a little bit more of a formal poetic form to use. You don't have to use this if you don't want to. But a pantoum is a poem with a specific form, excuse me. So it's a series of quatrains, which are 4-line stanzas. Hello, my name's Ryan. Nice to meet you. Basically all we've done so far is we wrote down the 5 most important things to us. A list 1 through 5, doesn't have to be like super in depth. Just take those 5 things, write them down quick. And so first quatrain, 4-line stanza, and the second one, the second and fourth lines become the first and third lines. What that means is, if I can count, Jesus Christ. So if the first stanza is 1, 2, 3, 4, the second stanza is 2, 5, 4, 6. Does that make sense? Cool. And then from the same kind of perspective, keeping the same pattern, the next stanza is going to be 5, 7, 6, 8. And then the last stanza kind of takes 2 of the first 2 lines and then repeats those. And then same thing with the first and third. Oh, excuse me. Alright, does that make sense? So it follows this form. It's a little bit complicated, but you get some weird and interesting poems that kind of come out of it. And so, what I want you guys to do, I'm going to give you instructions on the first 4 lines, and then what I want you to do after that, just kind of do whatever feels right, kind of following this pattern. And so, taking one of those things on your list from 1 to 5, I just want you to pick a topic to write about. If you're like, hey, something that's super important to me in my life is my family, then I want you to keep it focused on the topic of family. If you're like, hey, I really like my car, I like video games, I like, I don't know, go Broncos or something like that, you can write about that. Kind of one of those 1 through 5 things, write about those. For the first few, I'm gonna give you some instructions. For the first line, I want you to write something about the air, something that's in the air. So it could be birds, it could be mountains, it could be clouds, it could be the sound of the wind, it could be whatever.
Does it have to connect to your whatever you choose? Like
Correct.
your subject? It has to connect
Yes.
with air.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, if I'm writing about I don't know, my little sister, that I might talk about her laughter and how her laughter kind of carries itself throughout the room and bounces from wall to wall. That's something in the air, that's something in the sky. Those sound waves. Doesn't have to be literal, but it does have to, that topic of air. I'm sorry, I forgot. My apologies.
It's all good.
The second line, I want you to write about something in the earth or in the ground. That could be kind of the same topic of family, talking about my sister. She keeps me rooted, things like that. She is my rock, my foundation, things of that nature. Third line, I want you to write about color. So it'd be red, blue, purple, chartreuse, whatever you feel like. Do what feels right. And then the fourth line, I want you to write about, typically for this, I ask for something a little bit more metaphorical, but we're not going to do that today. I want you to write about, I don't know, a memory. / like something nostalgic. Seems super complicated, but really if you think about it, you're writing 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and you're following this pattern, you're really only writing 8 lines total. Alright? You're just repeating them over and over again. Anything I can clarify right now?
What's nostalgic?
Nostalgia. So it's like, I think of it as kind of like honestly, like kind of a joyful sadness. So I think about thinking about me and my childhood, thinking about, again, we'll talk about my sisters, talk about my family, talk about my brothers. If I'm thinking about kind of how we were as a child or children, like thinking about the happy times that we had, but kind of in that same vein, thinking about maybe I'm a little bit more somber now because those happy times are past. They're not there anymore. So I think of it kind of like a good kind of hurt. That's how I describe it sometimes.
Okay.
Any questions? Comments, concerns, grievances?
When we get to like the 5, 4, 6, what do we?
So
like we just create our own.
Yep. So
lines?
5, 6, 7, and 8. Those are going to be your creations.
Okay.
So do what you feel is right. Kind of put whatever lines you think fit there. The 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're going to kind of slide into these slots as they go along.
Yeah.
That all make sense?
Yeah.
All right.
And then how long? Like one sentence or?
One sentence.
Okay.
So the 1 through 5 that you guys kind of wrote at the beginning, I want you to pick one of those and that to be your topic. So if I said family was most important to me, I want to have family in mind as I'm writing all of those things. If I said a sports team or a certain activity or like bodily autonomy or whatever is most important to me, I want you to keep that in mind. And then as you're writing the first 4 lines of this, I want your first line, dealing with that topic, to contain a metaphor or some kind of comparison to something that's in the air. Whether that's like birds or clouds or mountains or whatever. Second line, something in the earth. Third line, something color. And then fourth line, a memory.
And then do we have to start time?
Yeah.
Or we just-
You start now. And time. Finish whatever sentence you're writing, whatever thought. And then we can share.
Sounds familiar?
Normally, so first of all, hi again. My name's Ryan. I do say words sometimes. I Is it helpful for you guys to know what I've done, or more so just like who I am?
Yeah.
More so who I am, or what?
Who are you? Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All
right.
You just dropped this man.
So, my name's Ryan. I used to work as a teaching artist, so I would go into high schools and prisons, and I would lead writing workshops, and I would do like professional development things. I also spent a lot of time doing writing and performing poetry. So previously I lived in Nebraska, in Omaha, and I would work for that nonprofit. I would do poetry events, poetry slams. I would lead writing workshops there. In the past, I've taken my show on the road. I've been in Denver a couple of times. I am now based out of Denver. And then I met Dr. Lewis at a poetry open mic this past week. And so she saw some of my words and she was like, hey, can you come talk to my class? And I was like, sure. My day job and sometimes my night job is I work in a hospital. I work in an emergency department. And so if you see me at work, no you didn't, but I will still take care of you just as well as anyone else. I will talk a lot about my age and how I feel old. I am not actually old. I just grown when I stand up, and I have affinity for certain brands of like riding lawnmowers. So I'm getting up there. I have a gray hair now. Like it's getting serious.
Hey, great.
I have 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. My dad is retired Air Force. Apparently, sometimes people can notice that. But that's the most important stuff about me, I think. Been in Denver this time about a year. I lived in the Springs for a while when I was younger. I lived in different parts of the U.S., different parts outside the U.S. The things that are most important to me are my family, some kind of display of success, which I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that looks like. I like music. I like being able to move my body in the way that I can and I will. Most of the time that means like some kind of fitness. I hate running on a treadmill. And I can't currently think of a 5th thing right now. So we're gonna go with those 4. Can you guys introduce yourselves, starting over here?
My name is Jack. Like your dad, I did a retired Air Force. I'm now a visual artist and videographer.
All right, very nice. Nice to meet you.
My name is Maddie. I'm 51. Married, veteran family. I also, let's see, cake decorator, part mechanic. Because my dad, I grew up in a garage. I was always in a garage with him, and I miss it. I have an older daughter. My oldest is 34. My youngest is 17. Last year in high school. But I massaged for over 25 years.
Okay, a lot of different experiences there.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my friends used to think of me as like a car guy. I'm not a car guy. I don't enjoy working on my car. It's just because like I couldn't afford to take it to someone else to get them to fix it. So it's just like I gotta learn.
Once you get into it, though, I mean, unless you don't want to get dirty and greasy. But
That's fair. I think. Never mind. I just had like a lot of experiences in like the cold in particular. It's just like outside underneath my car, and it's like negative.
you're in the garage.
Listen. Now I don't have a garage. Anyway. I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Maddie.
Maddie. And then back here?
My name is Stephanie. I'm 36 years old. Unlike you with your one gray hair, I've had gray hair since I was 15. Hereditary or genetic, I don't know. I have 3 kids. My oldest just graduated from high school, and my youngest is 5.
Okay.
I'm a stay-at-home mom right now, and looking to, obviously, for more opportunities and find a retirement job that I can have for later on in life.
My name is Roderick, Roddrick. It's often misspelled. The only places that got it right is like birth certificate, state ID, and social security card. Everybody else pretty much throw an E in there or 1D. So it's Roderick. Married, I thought I was the oldest in the school, but she got me about 1 year. She's 51, I'm 50. married, children, from Columbus, Georgia. Been in Denver since 2019. Love, family, second marriage. So I started pretty much over. I have certified children, like I like to call them, little ones. So the rest of them are adults, and here to get my high school diploma. I have my GED, but I always wanted that high school diploma. It's just something about it, and I don't want to miss out on it. So as soon as I saw this opportunity, I jumped right on it. And just love to write, take pictures, videos, and that's about it.
My name is Yoandre. I'm 29. Don't got a lot of cool stuff to say, but I mean, I'm trying to work my best to get my high school diploma and just get back on track in life, I guess.
My name is April. I was born and raised here in Colorado, so I'm a native. Yeah, I like to just read, listen to music. That's pretty much it. For the most part, I like to keep myself busy doing different activities, here for the same reason as everybody else, to get a diploma and, further continue an adventure in life.
All right.
That's about it.
It's interesting, because I didn't ask anyone their ages, but like you guys just kind of like volunteered it, and then you didn't, and so I thought that was interesting.
I was like, I'm 23. I don't want to flex on anybody.
Like no gray hairs here. And then I suppose, do you want to, I guess, like they know you. Do you guys already know each other?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Before school?
I don't know how long you guys have been in school. What month is it?
4 weeks, 5 weeks.
September. Okay.
And we're a new school, we've only existed since August 5th.
Okay.
So these are
Hey.
the trailblazers,
How
the
years?
Excel Center
Alright.
of Aurora. An adult high school for adults. This Goodwill has about 42, 43 in the country. This is the first one in Colorado.
Very nice.
So our students are 22 years and older.
Do you want to say anything about yourself?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I'll say something.
All right. Is there anything in particular that anyone wants to get out of today? No, it is a perfectly acceptable answer.
What was the question?
Is there anything in particular that anyone wants to get out of today?
Out of?
Yeah, like out of our time together in particular.
Some more knowledge on poetry.
Yeah, I was about to say that, more knowledge.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair, valid. You said Stephanie? You made eye contact. Do you want to read?
Probably
I
guys, Stephanie's
can.
always like, no. She's always like, no.
So first, can you tell us what 5 things you wrote down? And
Yeah.
then can you read your poem?
Yes. I wrote God, family, health, mental health, and financial stability.
Okay.
Um,
And before you read, I'm sorry. Typically for these kinds of situations, right here, right now, we're just now getting to know each other. I would, if there's feedback to offer, I would recommend it just be positive, not necessarily constructive, not negative. We're all new to writing, or I guess not all of us are new to writing. People mentioned some things, but you guys didn't ask for like a critique workshop today, so that's not what we're gonna do right now. Is that fair?
Sure.
All right.
I'm not sure if I did this right, but I will go. Okay. My daughter fills the air with joy, her personality, her smile. Our bond is as hard as a rock, sometimes unbreakable. The color purple reminds me of her because she loves it and wants everything purple. She is kind like no other. I know she defends kids that are being bullied or in unfair situations. Like I said, I don't know if I did this wrong, but our bond is as hard as a rock, sometimes unbreakable. She is wise beyond her 10 years of life. She is kind like no other, I know. standing up for kids that are being bullied or in an unfair situation. She loves, cares, and nurtures as a mother would. She is wise beyond her 10 years of life. Her heart full of life and compassion that I admire. She loves, cares, and nurtures as a mother would. And she is the light of my life, my son. And I only got to that part, but so the 7182, I just repeated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then her heart full of life and compassion that I admire. My daughter fills the air with joy, her personality, her smile. She is the light of my life, my son. Our bond is as hard as a rock, sometimes unbreakable.
Thank you for sharing, and congratulations. You have now written a Pantone.
Okay.
You did your whole thing. I'm sorry, I didn't do my whole thing. I only did the first 4.
Me too.
Yeah, 'cause she going on and on. Like, wait a minute, she completing 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. I didn't do that.
Okay.
Oh.
Do you want to take a couple more minutes and see if you can come up with 5, 6, 7, 8?
And it's just 5, 6, 7. So the columns now. Okay, I got 1 through 4.
Yeah.
So
So
was I supposed to break it off into going back to 2 for Earth?
So I apologize for being
I
confusing
didn't.
with my presentation. But so the form of a Pantone is split up into a series of what we call quatrains, which are 4-line stanzas. For the first stanza of the Pantone, I wanted you to do 1, 2, 3, 4 with these different 4 topics. For the second stanza, the form switches up a little bit. So the second and fourth lines of the first stanza come over here to the second stanza.
Okay.
And so you're just repeating line 2 and line 4 here. And then you add new lines 5 and 6.
So when you say repeat, you mean literally
Yep.
word for word?
Yeah.
Word for word.
So I did do it correctly.
You did
right?
correct.
Okay.
Because I heard you say that rock part again. I'm like,
Yeah,
maybe that's
that's
just some
what I-
flow.
Yeah.
She's supposed to do it that way.
Yep.
Okay.
And then for the third one, the line order is going to go 5, 7, 6, 8. So these lines here get carried over to the next stanza. And then the last one is just a repetition of all previous lines you've done before. It can be more than 4 stanzas if you feel so inclined. It just kind of goes on a little bit longer.
Could you say it one more time?
Sure.
I don't know why it still kind of has a rhyme scheme of.
So it doesn't necessarily have to rhyme, but it's like the repetition, specifically the repetition of lines. So first stanza has 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're taking the second and fourth line here and moving it over to the second stanza. There. So if it's helpful, what you can do is literally just write out 8 lines and then put them in this form. So first stanza 1, 2, 3, second stanza 2, 5, 4, 6, third stanza 5, 7, 6, 8, fourth stanza 7, 1, 8, 2. Does that make sense?
So whenever I see the same number, I'm just rewriting
Correct.
what I already wrote.
Yep.
So how many actual lines do I have?
8 lines.
Oh,
You're
I
on
see what
8.
you're saying.
Yeah.
4, then 5 is original, 6, 7, 8. But then I repeat. Okay.
Correct.
Now when you get to 5, 6, 7, 8, am I coming up with new?
So
Not air, not earth, not color, not memory. I'm coming up with something different.
you are coming up with something that is
but it
unique to
stays
you.
on your topic,
Yes.
whatever you selected.
Correct.
Okay.
I think I did it all wrong.
I know this.
I did too. I mean, I didn't do
So-
the repeat part.
Do you have a poem?
Yeah, I'll read it, but I know I kind of,
It is fine.
I like went back and switched and all this other stuff, but
Okay.
I'll read it. It's about my family.
Really, for a quick second, for your poem, do you feel like you have like enough words on the page, even if it doesn't match this form?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay. All right. And then up here, do you feel like you have enough words on the page, even if it doesn't match this form?
I think so.
I see lots of words on
I have
the
like
page.
10
I just write
I have like 10
All right. So I think in that case, we can kind of revisit this form in particular a little bit later on. But I think it's fine right now if we just read what we have written down. Pick a direction, left or right? Right? Okay.
Ain't nobody- well, I guess you could. Yeah, left. Okay. I grabbed my wrong glasses today, so I had to write bigger than what I normally would write. So I'm gonna try to do it the way I thought it was meant to be. So number one, my family is the air I breathe, as their love serves as oxygen. 2, my family is my world, AKA Earth. 3, my family reminds me of my life colors, black, gray, and pink. 4, I love how the memory of my twins being born on my birthday made me feel. I stopped there because I thought that was it.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. All right, pick a direction, left or right?
Left.
So I didn't write like sentences like, like that, I just wrote like just a whole paragraph.
Perfectly fine.
Oh gosh. So it's about my family. When I lost my dad, I looked up in the air to the clouds because I was afraid to look at him. Knowing he left the earth and cannot, earth and cannot be with him anymore. That color of his body sure changed. I remember when my dad and I always worked on cars. I miss them days. I was his masseuse for over 25 years. If I did not massage him, his legs would swell. The smell of car oil, grease, tools smelled like a stale, old smell. But for me to be by my dad, I made a lot of memories. Everywhere he went, I was right by his side. We laughed, joked. He took me for an ice cream, which he practically ate most of it. I miss everything, especially his advice. My mind races and my feet paces.
Thank you for sharing. Pick a direction, left or right?
Right? Go on.
Yep.
When I see myself, I feel like I am the cologne that's in the air. I am the cologne. When I think of myself, I think of soil. I am the dirt that makes the plant grow. When I think of a color, it would be red, for fire, passion, and strength. What I do what to be like the earth. It takes time to grow, but once it grows, you won't take it down unless I do like the earth. It takes time to grow, but once it grows, it won't die unless you kill it. When I think of myself, I think of greatness, and even though I might not be no one, I will achieve. Maybe even call me Dr. Montero someday. Memories that I wish that I could time travel to, but will always stay on my mind, like my childhood when I was playing basketball after school. Something like that.
Thank you for sharing. And then it doesn't matter.
The things that I had wrote down, I wrote down family, my cat, my friends, and my health, and money. I had wrote about friends, so I didn't get to finish it, but I got 1, 2, 3 laughters in the air all around my table. My 3 friends are so down to earth, green grass we feel as we ground ourselves. I swear whenever I'm blue, they make me feel strictly loved. Walking in the park right after dark when the street lights came on, better get home. My 3 friends are so down to earth, green grass we feel as we ground ourselves. I miss them, us together, we together. Walking in the park after dark when the street lights came on, better get home. Maybe tomorrow we'll see each other again. I miss them, us together, we together. That's all I got.
Thank you for sharing. All right. How did that feel?
Pretty good.
Good. Okay. Good is good. Love to hear it. Any questions, comments, concerns, grievances about what we've done so far?
I like that. What is it called?
Pantoum.
I like it.
I have kind of messy handwriting, and also I clearly didn't write large enough, so. But it's a pantoum. I think it's originally a Italian poem, but I cannot remember. What's everyone's experience with poetry so far? Like, you just remember reading like Green Eggs and like Dr. Seuss or something?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Poetry is an interesting kind of topic. It's kind of nebulous. A poem can pretty much be whatever you want it to be. There's a lot of different poetic forms. There's like a pantoum. There's like a sonnet. People like reading Shakespeare or something like that. There's stuff like sestinas. There's haikus. There's like free form, free verse, whatever. I think what I often do is, as I mentioned before, I like to introduce a topic and then like a poetic form to you guys. But I think with kind of the variable experience with poetry in the room, would it be helpful for you guys if I read a few of my poems? I guess read, perform.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh,
Before I do that, I drew some circles on the board. And in my head, they look better than they do on the board. I'm not an artist. I write, I don't draw. But with kind of the things that are important to me. So like my 5 things. These are the things that I typically write about the most. I write about family, I write about me, myself, and I, like identity, being black, what that's like, where I'm from, different personal experiences I've had. I write about music a lot. More recently, I've started to write about my job more, and so like what goes on in the emergency department and how that has affected me. And I think there are certain aspects of me that are core to my being, that are who I am, that are most central. That's why I put the little R there. It's very small. I don't know if you can read in the back. But like those are the things that are like most important to me. And then kind of like a little bit bigger than that, there are other things that I'm interested in. I have other interests, like there's a shared music interest in the room. I mentioned cars before. There's somewhat of a car interest in the room. And those, as these circles start getting bigger and the interests get a little bit further away from me and who I am as a person, there's a little bit of overlap with other people in their other circles. So for example, imagine for a moment, I don't know, Roderick, you are the blue circles. And so there are certain aspects of you and your identity that are very core to your being. And there's absolutely no overlap here with the red at all. Like what's very important to me might not be important to you at all. But as we start like stepping out from the core of your being a little bit more, maybe we talk about music. I can't read your wristbands right now, but does that say boobies?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I love boobies too, sure.
I love boobies, cancer, breast cancer.
Fair enough. And I think, so medical connection, like I work in a hospital, I work with folks who have like different kinds of cancers, and that could be something that we share, a shared interest. And so as these blue circles start kind of increasing a little bit more, there's an overlap between your circles and my circles, what's important to you and what's important to me. And I think at these intersections where we have that overlap is kind of when we have poems that really connect with an audience. In the same way that music connects, in the same way that certain movies connect, in the same way other stories connect. When we have those commonalities between us, that's when we can really start building those connections. Roderick, what's important to you maybe is also very important to Dr. Lewis. Maybe like the core of your being is very close to the core of her being. And so maybe there's a lot of overlap between your different circles. And so maybe it's easier for you guys to pick something out of the air and have that connection and feel that depth of connection with the poem that you read or a poem that she reads. Anyway, I've said enough words. I'm about to say more words. You guys ready for a poem?
Sure.
Do you want something like lighter or heavier? Like what's the vibe? Heavy. We just met. Like.
Welcome to the Excel.
All right, I'm gonna do a light one first, then a heavy one. How about that? You're like, why'd you ask? We didn't met. All right. I'm gonna do one. I'm just gonna do. I have a poem where I do a different interpretation of Genesis, so I'm just gonna do that. You guys ever been to a poetry slam before?
No.
Okay. Sometimes people like snap. You know, it's kind of stereotypical. You don't have to do that. Please don't do that. It'll make me uncomfortable.
Okay.
If the spirit moves you, it moves you. Anyway. As inspired by the ghosts of James Brown, The New King of Soul version of the Bible reads as follows. In the beginning was my blackness. And my black was with God, and my black was God, and God was black. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was empty and without form. Darkness was over the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called beautiful. And there it was, waiting from the jump. My blackness, afro freshly picked and patted, wondering who exactly forgot to pay the light bill, and that was the first day. And then God said, "Let there be a space where we might raise our hands only to clap on beats 2 and 4. And God called this place sky. And one day, a woman named Aretha filled it with such a joyful noise that God himself wept. And all of our thirsty skin drank in the sunlight the way it was supposed to. And there was evening, and there was morning, and that was the second day. And then God saw that the earth was dry and barren. So he made collard greens and yams and short ribs. And Jesus started doing the electric slide. And this was the first cookout. And when we saw the glory that he had made, we were all black and happy and full, and there was evening, and there was no more morning, and that was the fourth day. And then God turned to the angels and said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness." And Beyonce sprang forth from the sea like the black goddess of love she is. Drops of ocean clinging to her kinks. The water so grateful to be near something so divine that the drops turned into diamonds before they ever reached the ground. Except these, we didn't press into our gums. We used them to play hopscotch or to skip rocks, and no one paid for them in blood. And that was the 6th day, and on the 7th, he rested. You know one of those good naps you get after Thanksgiving when you have way too much of grandma's stuffing? And on the 8th day, he rose and stretched and yawned and called this place heaven, just for us. And we named it home. Here, we don't say that we become angels because we never stop being holy. And we don't fill our poems with the names of dead black children because they're right around the corner. And the name Trayvon is unremarkable, and Emmett is unburied, and we don't call them alive because here we have never known death. Here, every jump shot goes in, every batch of mac and cheese is baked to perfection, the sweet potato pie is always hot and sweet, fathers always make it back from the corner store, mothers never weep, the street lights never come on so the kids can play outside until their bodies melt into the night sky. Here, the people make the most beautiful constellations. Here we are beautiful, here we are, here we be. Black. And somehow that is enough. Thank you. So, with that, as you can see, important to me is my identity. My blackness, how that incorporates itself into my daily life, the set of experiences that are associated with it. There are a lot of specific references that I made that may be more relevant to those in my community than those outside of my communities. I think one thing that I started with that might not necessarily be like obvious to everyone is like this is a rewriting of like Genesis. It's like the creation in the Bible. I don't know how everybody like went to like Sunday school or church school or whatever when they were growing up, but it's like in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And like so for us and like a lot of people in the U.S. and that Judeo-Christian mindset, that is something that kind of is an overlap in those connections. That is something that even if it's not necessarily super important to one person or another, they can kind of latch onto. Excuse me. Were there any other elements in there that kind of stood out to you guys as something that might be a specific reference to a certain community or something that, I don't know, provoked some thought?
For me, I like how you connected the Bible to, I can literally hear and read where you was going with the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Like it felt like the 7th day, I knew you was gonna say rest.
Right.
I didn't know how you was gonna say it, but you just kind of rest. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't write like that. And that's what I was telling Dr. Lizzie. I was like, poetry, it always get me, because they sound like you. But when I write, it's just written out, but not necessarily in the, pitch it to you. Or take you here, I'm gonna take you, I do it, but not in the sense of how you just did it. So when I seen English, I literally thought we were just gonna go over grammar,
Okay.
noun, pronoun, adverb. Then she came with the poetry. I'm like, what is this? What we doing? I was totally shocked. I was like, oh, now I'm gonna go back over what verb means. Okay, I remember this. She hit me with the poetry. I'm like, oh, this is English. So yeah, I like what you just did.
Well, thank you.
It was almost to me like preaching. It was wonderful. I loved it.
Well, thank you. And I think that was maybe further down the line, talking about performance when it comes in like the perspective of poetry. I think there are a lot of elements that you could kind of like pick apart a little bit more. That delivery is very specific to this poem because of like the religious nature of it.
Yes.
Any other thoughts, feelings, emotions, grievances? I always ask about grievances. Like, is anyone upset? Are you guys mad at me?
I love James Brown though. Beyonce, yes.
Yeah, how long does it take you to memorize it?
That's a good question. It depends on the poem. It depends on how actively I'm trying to memorize it. If there's like, if there's something that's coming up where it's like a competition, I'll be a little bit more intentional about it. So I can do it, and I used to do it. Don't be like me, be better than me. I used to get asked to do poems as a part of like different shows that were going on, and I would not write the poem until like 2 nights before, and then I would memorize the poem the night before, and I would perform it the next day. Don't. I can't do that like I used to. My brain is just, it's the old age, as I mentioned before. I'm getting up there in years.
That gray hair, right?
That gray hair. That gray hair.
That one hair.
I groan when I stand up. Like, you guys, wait, can you hear? Oh, you can't hear. Yeah, exactly. You get it. All right.
That was a pretty long poem too.
Yeah.
Very long.
To memorize it.
Yeah.
Most of the poems so like in the world of poetry, I mentioned kind of like capital P poets before. There's a little bit more of an academic feel to what they do. They're the ones who are going to be reading like the Romantic poets and like old English literature and like maybe like a little bit more modern American stuff as well. I got introduced to poetry through someone getting up in front of a microphone and kind of like doing their thing, kind of like performing.
So, thank you, go.
You keep going.
Okay, I was like, I don't know what's happening.
Sorry.
Ignore me.
And so like that's how I got introduced to the world of poetry. It was like, hey, I saw one of my peers doing something that I thought was cool. I want to do that thing. And then someone called it poetry, and I was like, great, cool, doesn't matter. I still want to do that thing. And like obviously, like in elementary school, middle school, Dr. Seuss, like Shel Silverstein, that kind of stuff. And I was introduced to it from that perspective, but that's not what moved me kind of later on in life. It was more so that performance aspect of it. And I think that coming back to these intersections of identities we were talking about before, I think that what I want to do with my words and with my performance is to connect with people. And so I think that for me in particular, I am able to best do that when I'm in front of a microphone. And so that's why I chose my medium. That's why I do what I do, the way I do it. Any other questions? Someone mentioned, I'm sorry.
How many have you written
Oh, there's too
of your
many.
own, like original?
There's too many. It's just like I got like a heart, like folders and folders on my laptop of completed poems, of poems for the page, of poems for performance, poems that I used to do like 5-10 years ago that I don't do anymore. It just kind of varies a lot. The first poem I ever did will never see the light of day again. It's rough. And so I applaud people who can revisit their earlier work and not be ashamed, but I'm not one of those people. Like it's bad. And so I think one of the things that we say sometimes is that you have to get the bad poem out before you get the good poem out.
Mm-hmm.
And so just like if this is something that sparks interest or sparks joy, I would just like try writing. It doesn't have to be something that's a form like this. It could just be putting words down on a page. It doesn't have to be something that's performance. It could just be essentially like journaling or a diary or whatever. You got another question?
I got another one. Since you work in the medical field, during the COVID-19 hype, like when it was first kicking in and stuff, did you write about it as you experienced it
I
in
wrote.
the medical field?
So my experience with that was a little bit varied, just because I was a student then, and so they had us in like slightly different roles. It was more so like we weren't on the floors caring for the patients generally. It was us like washing like the personal protective equipment or doing phlebotomy or stuff like that. As the pandemic, like the second wave started, so like late 2020, early 2021. I was in the hospital a little bit more, and so I was in some of the COVID ICUs. But at that point, they had a better idea of how to treat folks, and so it was still kind of scary in the sense that it was these isolation rooms. You had to put on the gown and the gloves, and everything's hot. And you feel sweaty, and you're like, "Am I about to pass out? I don't know." And then kind of like going in and talking to patients, and at that point, there were still a lot of like the really sick patients with COVID, but maybe fewer, or maybe more of the less sick patients with COVID, because the censuses were starting to balance out a little bit, and so we could afford to keep more people in the hospital, I guess, at that point in time. More recently, I would say my experience with like medicine and writing has been a lot around just loss. And death and dying, and how that affects me and how that affects my patients' families, and how it feels in a lot of ways that I'm doing my best, and sometimes my best isn't good enough.
It's really emotional,
Yeah.
especially when you take care of patients and you're not supposed to get close to them, and you come back to work and they're gone, it's hurtful.
Do you guys want to hear a poem about that?
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
That's kinda like,
are you
yeah.
We're ready for the heavy stuff.
Do you guys want something that's, again, a little bit more performative, or do you want something that's a little bit for the page? Still less performative. Can I get a show of hands? Performative. Oh, so
What
more
does that
performative.
mean?
So more performative is kind of like what I just did.
Oh, okay.
Less performative would be kind of me reading off my phone, reading a poem. And so more like concerned about vocal dynamics and engaging with the audience and like weird hand movements, and more so just like, here are the words, here's my experience.
Performative.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna go with less. Who's got less?
So we got 3 for performative, we have 1 for less performative, and we have
I'll go with
apathy
less.
for the rest.
Less.
Okay. All right, I think performative wins it. I don't know why I gave you guys options, because now I'm like, I don't want to stand up. I work in an emergency department. I'm the one in the green scrubs. They're loose around the waist, but heavy on the shoulders. Nurses who've been doing this longer than I've been alive look to me for answers that I don't have. I don't like talking about my job because it makes me feel like a fraud. I don't save lives, I just put the broken pieces of bodies back together in the hopes that someday they can heal. My work is defined by 2 things. 1, removing various objects from various holes, and 2, my own inadequacy. In every room, there's the incessant dinging of the heart monitor. Eventually, the space between the beeps stretches to infinity, and there's nothing I can do about it. The first dead body I saw was listed as 39 Ford in his medical chart. At that hospital, we would list unknown patients by the cars they were found in. I thought it cruel to be named after your coffin. For him, I always wondered if we should have done more. More rounds of chest compressions, more epinephrine. My senior asked, well, when would you have stopped? And I don't have an answer. The second dead body I saw was called John. John was found down in a ditch. Came in with a Lucas machine strapped to his chest. That's like the mighty fist of God slamming into your sternum over and over. When I did compressions, I could feel his broken ribs shifting underneath my palm, his eyes open wide to heaven. I kept going until I heard his daughter crying in the hallway. She thanked me. The third dead body I saw was, then wasn't. Her name was Kelsey. She was too young to be that sick, bleeding almost faster than we could give it back, us dumping oceans into her. My attending wanted to called her a waste of hospital resources, but you look her daughter in the face and tell them that you gave up. Her husband called her a fighter, fist balled up, ready to throat punch God, and now Kelsey is alive. I can look her husband and sons in the face and tell them that I did my best and they thanked me, but the only thing I ever did was give her a chance. The fourth dead body I saw was my brother's age, and I don't remember his name. The beeping of the heart monitor means that he still has time. I still have time. There's chaos. A mass of bodies moving in and out of sync. A voice lifts itself above the crowd and asks if anyone has any ideas, and what follows is a silence large enough to swallow somebody's son. There's a moment in a code where hope runs dry. We have poured life into this corpse for 45 minutes, and I have given everything. At what point am I working just for the absolution of my guilt? My own unsteady hands unable to get the line in place fast enough. My tongue already forming the beginnings of an apology. My senior shakes her head. Calls time of death. Asks for a moment to remember the life lost. A room full of heads bowed, begging for a maker to welcome their son back home, and then, on the monitor, a beep.
See, I'm not playing. I knew you was gonna say beat. I was following you. I'm not playing. I said, why you say beat? Because the person lived.
I go for a while.
Thank you.
They're about to cry.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
I'm still like getting used to putting my work poems out there in the world, but I will give it some thought.
Yeah.
And so, this poem in particular is interesting and a little bit difficult when we're talking about the different intersections and the different spaces that someone may occupy. Well, first of all, let me check the temperature in the room. How's everyone feeling?
Good.
Emotional.
Yeah, that's fair. That's valid.
It was an emotional poem, you know.
Yo, that took me from 0 to 100 real quick.
No, I know.
It started out you being in the hospital, and then like you putting life together, and then all of a sudden all of this beeping and all of this like death, and then like you bringing people back to like yeah, that was hard. That was definitely a hard poem.
Because when you're a nurse, you don't wanna have to go tell the family that they didn't make it.
Yeah,
You know, and
exactly.
they look at you like, well, you couldn't do anything, cause some people are like that. You know, they wanna blame the doctors right away and stuff, and it's not the doctor's fault. You know, everybody's bodies are different. You know, immune systems, it's all about everything, you know, if you eat right, you'd be more healthier, you know, it's like we're like a car, if you give it bad oil or bad gas, it's not gonna run right. So, doctors have a lot, like when he said, his pants are loose, he has a lot on his shoulders because he don't know what he's gonna run into, what, patient, what is he gonna have to resuscitate, if, you know, go through all that every day. And that's hard.
And I think the difficulty with like these different intersections of identity. This poem initially started out with there's a lot of like trauma associated with the healthcare system and with healthcare workers, specifically for like women and people of color. And so it's like there is sometimes a feeling of relief whenever you see a provider that looks like you. So like a black provider treating a black patient. And in those moments, that line where like I felt like a fraud is when that's where that came from. Where it's like I'm doing my best to help people and doing what I can, and sometimes it's just like it's not enough. And so like when I walk in the room and people see a face that feels familiar, I feel like there's a little bit of expectation to that. And I think the reason I wrote this piece was because I was worried about not meeting those expectations. And sometimes you just don't.
Amen to that.
All right. I have approximately maybe like 5 to 10 more minutes.
Yeah, you could do another poem if you want.
Read one from your phone now.
I could either read one from my phone about my grandmother, or do a corny love poem.
Do a corny love poem.
A corny.
Yeah, I was trying to do that sonnet or like Shakespeare, and I was trying to be like, well, if I am love, then love is not I, or something like that.
Yeah.
It didn't work out.
Yeah, and like one of really cool poem, like a form that I like, is called. Actually, I'm just gonna erase this. If you guys want to look up Pantoums later, I'll write the word Pantoum up there.
She's like, I know what we doing next.
I know what your final's gonna be.
So, so a cool poetic form, the Pantoum. Yay, huzzah. One other one that I really like is called a contrapuntal. But for the life of I can't write one. Like you mentioned the difficulty with a sonnet, I can't write a contrapuntal. It's weird because it's like it's a 2-column poem. So you first write, so like column 1, column 2. I should put like 1. That didn't work. Anyway, so column 1, column 2. How a contrapuntal works is you read down column 1 first, and then you read down column 2 second. And then the third read through of the poem, you start in like the top left-hand corner, and you just like read the lines across.
Wow.
And so it's essentially like you're reading, it's kind of like 3 poems all in one. It's weird, it's interesting, it's cool, and when it's done well, it's done amazingly, except I can't do it well. So if you guys are interested, contrapuntals and Pantoums, look those up, they're fun, they're interesting. Anyway, corny love poem. I wrote this because I used to have another corny love poem that was about stars and space and stuff, and I really like stars and space and stuff, and then me and that woman broke up, and so I'm like, I can't do that poem anymore, that's weird. And I'm like, but people like the love poems, so I wrote this love poem. And I always mess up at the beginning, because it's stupid. Also, like, I call it a corny love poem, because I know it's corny, because love poems are corny, it's fine. Just like, I'm gonna lean into it, you guys just gotta lean into it with me. Right?
Okay.
Accompany me on this journey. An open letter to my future wife. Hi. My name's Ryan. I like the stars and freshly cut grass and the feeling you get when you stick in your phone charger perfectly on the first try. I told you it was bad. I'm bad at love. When I say I'm bad at love, I mean when I met the first girl I ever told I love you, I was 13. She had eyes like storm clouds, twice as beautiful and 3 times as destructive, leaving a trail of boys' hearts wherever she went. When I told her I love you, it sounded a little bit too much like loneliness mixed with abandonment issues. So I practiced it again and again and again in the hopes of one day proving her right. And eventually, she left me for a boy who could skateboard and love her the way she wanted. But it's fine. I recovered. I found a girl that told me that she loved me, but when she did, the words came out awkward like a teenage boy slow dancing for the first time. I tried. I practiced all the things a good boyfriend is supposed to do. I woke up early to see the sunrise because it reminded me of her smile. She taught me that my hands were perfectly molded to fit her waist, that our eyes were linked to one another so that I could always find home, but she didn't feel like home. So I left. I wandered. I didn't know then, but I do now, that I was only ever always looking for you. I went searching for a place where our song was the only one that played on the radio. The second girl I ever told I love you died before the words could crawl their way out of my throat. She taught me that regret hurts far more than rejection, and her ghost guided my hand as I wrote this poem. I followed the angels high-stepping through my dreams, hoping that they would lead me to holy ground, but instead, I found a girl with church bells playing a song on her tongue and 2 eyes the color of honey. I told her I love you, and the entire congregation said amen. She taught me that God was real, and that she hated that I swore whenever she wore that little black dress, but I would do it anyway because the devil might have been working hard, but her body was working harder. The third girl I ever told I love you taught me that whenever she asked me to go dancing, I should dance. It's not about the fact that she can or that I can't. It's more about the fact that among the approximately 8 billion other pairs of feet on this earth, she would rather have hers stepped on by mine than by anyone else's. I told her I love you more times than there are stars in the night sky. Every audience, I broke myself open for, learned her name, and yet, in the end, we still moved to opposite sides of the country. Our bodies, two shooting stars racing into the distance faster than my voice could reach her. Honesty is the only language I have ever known. Every time I said I love you, I meant it in every way that I knew how. I have spent most of my life as a boy, trying to become a man worthy of love, and I failed more times than I can count in the hopes that one day I might meet you, all of which is to say these stories, these heartbreaks, these temporary sutures meant to stitch my bleeding heart back together will only ever practice for the first time that my eyes meet yours, and I say, hi. My name's Ryan. I like freshly baked cookies and prints and the feeling you get when one hand slides into another perfectly on the first try. I'm bad at love. But on days like today, it's okay. It feels like for my entire life, I've just been rehearsing. For you. Any last thoughts?
Not that time. I was gonna say that too. I knew somebody was gonna say that. But no, that time I did not catch where you was going with it, but that was nice. Now I got a question. Like the first one, the one you did before I walked out. How do you, even though you're performing, you know your words, you know your feelings, how do you not cry? Because I was teary-eyed, because I lost people, and you made me think about if I was in the ER, like when I lost my 20-year-old gunshot, how you was saying how you did this, the holes and the beeping.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel like I was there, but I wasn't in the ER, and seeing it from your point of view. So how do you, as a person, not cry?
I think that piece in particular is, it's almost like all or nothing. It's like either I'm about to have an emotional breakdown on stage, or I'm just like kind of almost like walls up, just like compartmentalizing. With that piece, I think I'm still kind of trying to figure out how I want to navigate it, because it is vulnerable, because it does, it connects with audience members, but also like it's rough for me and it's rough for them. And it's like, what purpose does it serve when I try to like present it to a crowd or an audience?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it can be helpful with helping build bridges between me and audience members. I think sometimes it can be helpful in terms of if I'm doing like a set or a feature set somewhere, that those emotional dynamics, that can be helpful. But I think what I find myself doing most with that piece is right around the third person I mentioned is kind of when I start feeling like internally, like that turmoil. Because like I remember that case, and I remember when I was talking to my boss about it, I was like, hey, I think we should keep doing this thing. And then my boss was like, yeah, at this point, we're just essentially wasting blood product. I'm like, how can you say that we're wasting blood product when we are literally like keeping someone alive right now? Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of back and forth between the patient, the family, my boss, and it's like, what do we need to do to help her have the best outcome? And so when I'm performing that piece, that's kind of like, what? Like I'm going back to that moment. And so I think what I do if I'm like, this feels flat, this feels like I'm not into this, therefore the performance is not very good, I try to tap into those emotions a little bit more. I try to remember those moments. I try to remember the faces of the family members of this person. And then obviously, like so for context, I don't put real names of people in my pieces for like HIPAA violations, and I don't put specific details if I can't. And if I'm getting too emotional, oh, that's a mess. Because it's like, you can't really like stop. And so it's difficult on stage. I will sometimes take like a steadying breath. I will sometimes focus on either a particular part of the room or a particular audience member. And so like come out of the poem a little bit, because like up here I'm looking at people and I'm not really like looking at you. I think if you actually pay attention, most of the time I'm like in between you guys, kind of like staring at the back wall or like in between, because you guys distract me sometimes with like the facial expressions. Every time I make eye contact with you, you look away, which I was like, that's funny.
That's funny.
But I think in those moments, it's like, how can I not go over the edge and like have that breakdown on stage? And so there are certain things, like looking at certain parts of the room, taking a steady breath, things like that, that sometimes can help like bring those emotions back.
So have you ever cried on stage,
Absolutely.
broke down?
Yes, absolutely. The first time I did that work poem, that I cried on stage, and I was so upset with myself because I'm like, get it together, Ryan. Because it's like at that point, from like a performance aspect, you're like, can you keep that emotion like bottled enough so that the audience can still actually hear what you're saying, or are you just kind of like,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of like mumbled garbage. And if I think by and large for most people, it's not a problem at time. But with poetry slam in particular, sometimes folks will, like you have to have a poem that's about 3 minutes long, max. And so in those poems, I don't have time to like have an emotional breakdown on stage, because like I might be out here competing for money or like glory or something like that.
Why do people snap instead of clap?
It's less disruptive. That's the thought process. So like,
Because I always snap when like, yeah, I always do that little
That
snapping.
makes me feel eerie.
I know.
Like every.
I can also
I
snap.
don't know, like I've always seen that in poetry, like they snap instead of clap, so I was like, alright.
I don't know the origins of it, full disclosure. But
Probably back in the beat poets in the 60s, and it was, so I think that disrupted it.
any last questions from me? Comments, concerns, grievances?
Yo, you're a good poet, bro. I'm not even gonna cap. I'm not even gonna cap you out, bro. Like you spoke some truth.
Thank you.
So maybe someday I'll get as good as you in writing and like expressing like poetry like that. You know? But yeah, that was hard. That was definitely some hard shit.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
No cursing in class.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you guys are interested in like doing some poetry stuff around the city, there is the Denver Mercury Cafe. They do it's kind of close to Rhino, but it's they do a poetry open mic every, goodness gracious, poetry open mic Friday nights, 9 p.m.
Is it the Mercury Cafe?
Yes.
Let's go.
They also do Sunday nights, open mic, and slam. Oh my goodness gracious. Slam.
Already read like a doctor.
You signed a prescription?
Listen, we do electronic prescriptions.
prescriptions.
So these are both at, I don't even know where to put this.
I'm gonna go to that.
So these are at the Mercury Cafe. Mondays at I think 6:30. There is a open mic at the Corner Beat, which is also kind of like in a similar part of town. And then fourth Fridays, or last Fridays, I think, last Friday. At like 7:30. There is an open mic at Slam Nuba, which is, I would just Google them. It's just, but it's at the Redline Contemporary Arts Center, but I don't feel like writing out those words. And then, goodness gracious, what was the name of the open mic we were at?
The Vintage Theater. I think that's the only name they have, right? Oh, House of Poetry.
House of Poetry, there we go.
House of Poetry, which meets on the fourth Thursday
You go there, mister?
of the month. I went for the first time this past Thursday, and that's where I met Ryan, aka Dr. Ryan. And the next one. We're going on a The next one is actually technically the fourth Thursday of September. It's actually going to be the last day of class for our 8-week session. And so I want to invite these students to perform a poem.
Ooh.
As part of your final, as part of your final.
What?
For the class at Lexington. I just wanted to share, share with you.
I do my ID poem, if anything.
Yeah, so I wanted us to, that was what I kind of wanted to, kind of spring on you. And then we'll get to kind of talk more about it.
Don't you see drinking what type of situation he's in second space?
So I'll let Dr. Ryan have his final, whatever kind of final say.
I would say the biggest things that I would keep to remember for you guys is like as you're writing, as you're developing your voice, keep remembering those things that are important to you. There is, I think, a tendency when you start writing is to write something you think other people are gonna like. Write something that you like. Read, help develop your taste, but keep what's important to you. Sometimes with high schoolers, we'll also turn this into like a goal setting workshop. And so with those 5 things that are important to you, I have people cross off the least important thing. And then you have 4 things on your list. And then again, cross off the least important thing. And keep going to that process until you have 1 thing left. And I tell people at that point in time, make sure that everything you're doing in your life is directed towards kind of making sure this one thing doesn't get compromised. And so if family is what's most important to you, I would recommend that as you're planning out your day to day, week to week, month to month, etc., figure out what you need to do in order to continue to prioritize family. Because I think a lot of people, specifically in my line of work, we start losing bits of ourselves as we get more invested in our work. And so I do things like this. I sometimes work with medical students because something that's important to me is continuing to interact with learners in some way, shape, or form. And so that sustains me, that keeps me human, that keeps me whole. And so kind of remembering to continue to do what keeps you whole. Any final things, questions, comments?
Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
We very appreciate you
Yeah.
coming out.
Thank you, Ryan. I'll see you in coaching one of these days.
Absolutely.